Welcome to my first video at Atomic Vinyl Reviews. My name's Jacob, and today we'll be taking a look at the Sega premium figure Shin Godzilla. Now, I've been very excited to review this figure, as such, I haven't found any other English reviews for this figure. I found a few in Japanese, but I'm pretty sure they won't get that much of an audience along the English market. So let's take a look. This is a Japanese exclusive figure that you could originally only get in a arcade-style crane game. You know, the one where you have the big claw and it reaches down and you pick up the stuff. Yeah, but I got mine off eBay for a relatively high price, and nowhere near as much as it tends to go for, but still pretty extreme. So, was it worth it? Let's take a look. The figure comes in a beautiful bright red box, complete with images of the figure on the front, the top, and the back, and promotional pictures from Shin Godzilla on either side. I think this box is a really nice addition to the figure. Looks very professional. And opening it up, you'll see that Shinny here comes in a clamshell style packaging, kind of like the Monster Arts on the inside. And the tail is in two separate pieces. He has such a massive tail. Anyway, let's take a closer look at the figure. The first thing you'll notice about this figure is the size. It stands about 13 centimeters from the foot to the head. Now, it does go up to the advertised 18 centimeters from the base of the base to the tip of the tail, but it is a lot smaller than some of the promotional art may make it look. As you can see, he has peg holes under his feet, and they just pop into this nice stand. I do like the stand. It's very simple, black rectangle basically. It does give him this kind of very stylish look for a figure. Taking him off the stand, however, he can stand alright in some situations, but most of the time, being the chunky figure that he is, especially with that tail, he does tend to topple over onto his right side. Or should I say his left side. I really like the weight of this figure. It's made from a solid vinyl and is overall a really chunky figure. And just look at that massive tail. Now, the tail does have some issues as it is leaning towards the side, so the figure, without its base, does tend to topple over. When you do put it on its base, it does seem to stand really nicely. It does come with a separate little tail holder. As you can see here, I haven't taken it out of its packaging yet because I'm just happy with it being on the stand. Another thing that's really nice on this figure is the paint. Overall, it is a lot more detail in the paintwork than the Bandai Japan version of Shin Godzilla. I do really like the paint on this one overall, although the toenails are a bit too bright for me. They do look better in person than they did in the promotional imagery, but they could have used a more dulled down, dirty colored yellow. And personally, I do prefer a Godzilla with some slight bone-colored highlights along the spines, but that's more a problem with the overall Shin Godzilla design that I have than with this figure. One of the best things this figure has going for it is the detail. It is clearly hand-sculpted. I think the sculpting is one of the best aspects of this figure. As you can see, the sculpting down the tail and across the body really brings out the burnt zombie-likeness of the Shin Godzilla design. The details are sharp and crisp and brought out really nicely by the paint, unlike the Bandai Japan figure, which I do really like. However, one detail which brings this figure down is the head. It comes across as silly looking and just generally doesn't match the film. Now for my personal favorite segment, the size comparison. Here we have the Sega figure next to the Bandai. We can clearly see the difference in coloration and details. The proportions are also very different. The Bandai Japan figure looks more like they 3D printed the CG model from the film to make this figure, whilst the Sega figure is clearly a hand-sculpted one. As I've said before, the details on the Sega figure are nice and crisp and deep, while the proportions on the Bandai figure seem to be much better and closer to the film. One thing both these figures share is that the hands aren't facing up towards the sky like they do in all the images we've seen of Shin Godzilla. Instead, they seem to have that same sort of sideways classic Godzilla pose. An element that they did really well, I feel, in the design of Shin Godzilla in general, is his feet. They managed to keep them in the classic Godzilla style, while still adding that dinosaurian element by just lifting his heel slightly off the ground. I think they did this much better here than in some other incarnations of him or fan drawings where they just give him completely dinosaurian legs. Rather, it does still look like he has the classic Godzilla foot, but just heel is slightly above the ground instead of it being a completely separate segment of his leg. I do really like how the Shin Godzilla design captures the overall feeling of a Godzilla design, where it still feels like Godzilla, but makes it more extreme and more out there than even the 2014 American design, which personally didn't really feel like a Godzilla design. There's something about the way that it's made to be more reptilian, and it kind of like his face looked a little more like Barney the dinosaur, if you get what I mean, that more rounded sort of nose, and that's one thing I really like about the Shin Godzilla design, where it's so out there, even stranger than that design, which I do like the American design, but I like it as a kaiju, but not necessarily as a Godzilla design. Shinny here does come across as Godzilla. Originally, I thought these two figures would be approximately the same size, as they both were advertised as being about 18 centimeters tall. However, you can clearly see that the Sega Shinny is a lot smaller. Actually, bringing in the 64 Monster Arts figure, you can see there is approximately the same height as that. And here we have him next to some NECA Godzilla figures. And some more assorted Monster Arts figures. The 1995 birth version and the 1954. And here he is next to the X Plus 30 centimeters Gigan figure. Overall, the Sega Prize Shin Godzilla figure is a pretty good figure if you don't mind a slightly stylized version of the figure, especially if you're after something that's a bit chunky. It does look a little cheap in some aspects, like the face and the arms, and the proportions are out of balance, but so overall the body details are really good, and otherwise it is a nice collector's piece. And I'd say if you're happy with the head sculpt and don't mind a slightly smaller scale figure that needs a stand, but really are into the sharper details, I would go for this one. Thank you for tuning in to Atomic Vinyl Reviews. I am planning to release more reviews in the future, and hopefully in a lot better quality. This one was really rushed out, just because I got the figure and wanted to release the first English review of it. Anyways, collect the radiated vinyl. If you have any suggestions of or any specific figures you'd like me to review, please let me know in the comments below. One last thing, if anyone does know anything about the Shin Godzilla film being released internationally, specifically in Australia, I would really love to hear from you. Or if there's an online version somewhere out there, I'm dying to see this movie. Every time I go online, there's another spoiler for it, and I just can't wait any longer. Unless there is a confirmed Australian release, I need to see this film online. All you lucky people in Japan and Asia and America, enjoy the movie. Please let me know if you know anything. Thank you.